Salute. All right, top of the morning. This is Malik Alim reporting for the Underlocking Key. I am the chairman of the New York State chapter of the Noble Young Laws Party. So this section is a little different. It's pertaining to for gender struggles and the united struggle from within. That's the call that came up within the Underlocking Key. And since Noble Young Laws Party is here as the People's Party to speak on behalf of all those who are oppressed, I mean, some of y'all might think this is funny or whatever, but it's not funny at the end of the day, because people are human and people are being oppressed and killed, and Puerto Rico is a call of emergency. So that's the reason why I have to address this. All right. So basically, all right, I'm just reading the articles. I really have no, well, let's see. If I have my own thoughts on it, I'll give it the thought. So basically, it says that it is like about, it says domestic violence is common in Puerto Rico with at least 5,517 females victims recorded. All violence is reprehensible, and we have to fight it relentlessly. Gender violence is a social evil based on ignorance and attitudes that cannot have space or tolerance in the Puerto Rico that we aspire to. For too long, vulnerable victims have suffered the consequences of systematic machismo, inequity, discrimination, lack of education, lack of guidance, and above all, lack of action. It is my duty and my commitment as governor, I guess this comes from governor as a quote, governor, to establish a stop to gender violence, and for these purposes, I have declared a state of emergency. I don't know why they call him the governor, but let's see. All right. Then it goes on to say that that's it. That's what it said. So they highlighted that part. The other part that they highlight as well, I guess, is an oppression. It says also that's in Puerto Rico that approximately 7 trans women has been killed, brutalized. And then they say here in America, United States of America, black transgender woman shot to death in Georgia, Mississippi. So I guess, it's like some type of abuse is happening. But what it also says is that, because this is a long read. I'm not reading the whole thing. But, so basically what it's saying that, that they oppress, and as the United struggles within, and the MIM, Ios International Movement, and Noble Young Laws Party has to stand in solidarity. Stand against oppression. That's that. And then, all right. So let's see. All right, this is short. So I'm just gonna read this. All right. So it says, in making a determination of what organizing strategy and tactical approach will be most effective in achieving the revolutionary goals of a political vanguard, we must first conduct a dialectical analysis of our strategic objectives. Thus, we begin our examination with an overall look at our political line. What are our general positions and our main objectives? Which of these should be given priority? What tactics will be best advance the struggle for liberation, justice, and equality? In the United States, the most oppressed groups are prisoners, First Nations, and sexual minorities and women. Therefore, it is these specific groups to which I give priority and focus here. That's the person that's writing the article. All right. We have excluded the author's analysis of First Nations to focus this article. All right. How can we better organize these groups, and what tactics have worked in the past? Okay. It also says the Congress report makes no mention of women or LGBT prisoners or of issues and projects specifically affecting these groups. And then as a transgender revolutionary feminist and a USW comrade, feel that the absence or exclusion of these oppressed groups from the discussion is of significant concern. Whenever it's confronted on the issue of gender, it merely refers to the old back issues, gender and revolution and feminism. But what is being done now today in regards to gender oppression and the advancement of revolutionary feminism within the ranks of Maoist international ministry? The concept of principal contradiction comes from dialectical materialism, which says that everything can be divided into opposing forces. The revolutionary feminist struggle against patriarchy is by no means secondary to the principal contradiction in the world today between imperialist countries and the oppressed nations they exploit. Sartre has observed that if the feminist struggle maintains its ties with the class struggle, it could shake a society in a way that will completely overturn it. The struggle for gender equality also includes transgender women and other sexual minorities. The situation of transgenders particularly is so vexing that administrators that the National Commission on Correctional Health has drafted a position statement, transgender healthcare in correctional settings. All right. When determined to be medically necessary for a particular inmate, homotherapy should be initiated and sexual assignment surgery on a case-by-case basis. Okay, gotta be subjective. Transgender females, and especially in prison, are often discriminated against and sexually abused in much the same way as biological women, but far worse. It says that Representative Bobby Scott has introduced a much needed piece of legislation, the Prison Abuse Remedies Act, which would end the widespread impunity enjoyed by prison officials when inmates are raped on their watch. It would change the worst parts of the PRLA, which makes it virtually impossible for prison rape survivors to seek redress in court. Attorney General Eric Holder and Justice Department officials are dragging their feet on implementation of the National Prison Rape Elimination Commission recommended standards for the prevention, detection, response, and monitoring of sexual abuse. In the meantime, more than 100,000 adults and youth continue to be sexually abused each year while in prison. And failing to discuss these issues, Maoist International Ministry has missed a great opportunity to revolutionize these oppressed groups and like their struggles with the overall anti-imperialist movement. This is a strategic and tactical mistake on our part, in my humble opinion. Okay. Women and the LGBTQ community are oppressed groups and potential revolutionary classes nearly on par with oppressed nations, particularly with the criminal justice system, and MIM must raise their level of importance on the list of priorities at least to the level of national liberation struggles and prisoner struggle. This is in line with the Maoist theory of United Front and the expansion of anti-imperialist struggle among lumpen organizations, as well as international solidarity, women and queers of the world. So that's, and so the response is in a discussion of what the principal contradiction is in the world today and what role feminism plays in that contradiction. Let's first clearly define what a principal contradiction is. There are many contradictions in the process of development of a complex thing, and one of them is necessarily the principal contradiction whose existence and development determine or influence the existence and development of the other contradictions. That was quoted by Mao Zedong. Now it says go to page 13. 13, page 13. Here we go. All right, page 13, and it continues from right here. Ending oppression is our goal. The struggle towards this goal in our current society is our complex thing. It has many contradictions which are interacting with each other throughout the course of its development. We say gender, class, and nation are the main three. Determining which contradiction is principal in the world today gives us a guide for how to organize and what issues to organize around. We determine which is the principal contradiction using a materialist based in material reality, analysis of history. The principal contradiction is principal and not secondary, because of the way its development will impact the development of other contradictions. We do not choose it. It is shown to us in history. Establishing a principal contradiction is not a matter of deciding which struggles most affect us on a personal or subjective basis. The principal contradiction is the one we need to focus on because history has shown that it will bring the best results. As sympathizers with all oppressed, continue from where? All right. With all oppressed peoples in the world, including women and LGBTQ people, we hope to reach communism as fast as possible to minimize human suffering. But based on our study and analysis, we say that nation and not gender is the principal contradiction at this time in history, and we need to wow, this is a long article. All right, and we need to organize to push the national contradiction forward. For example, and contrary to what the person is writing this, Bodica or Boudica, something like that, claims oppressed nations are far more oppressed by the criminal and justice system than biological women. Men were 14 times more likely to go to the state or federal prison than women, while black men were 6.5% more likely than white men. The gender gap is bigger than the national gap, but in favor of oppressing biological men. To argue that biological women are more oppressed, you're going to have to base your argument somewhere else. Our comrade does present here examples of the unique oppression faced by women and LGBTQ prisoners in the United States. Yet the form of solutions proposed are reformist and at best, and at worst, the demands of the gender privilege. We must not focus on these examples of oppression in isolation as a replacement for a scientific analysis of how development of the gender contradiction will affect other contradictions, namely nation, and our overall goals as Boudica does. Historically, laws against rape have expanded, not combated, gender privilege. Similarly, the development of leisure time-related medicine has largely benefited the gender privilege at the expense of the oppressed. The use of drugs related to depression and mood is a means of adapting to an oppressive system or being forced to submit as it more clear in the prison environment. That said, we will encourage comrades to utilize antidepressants as a last result if they are unable to put in work without them. The initiation of hormone therapy and sex reassignment surgery could play similar roles as psychological aids to cope in an oppressive world. But when we are considering strategic battles on behalf of the oppressed, shutting down control units, for example, will have a much bigger influence on mental health while also developing the anti-imperialist struggle for prisoners as a group. Under capitalism and imperialism, it is impossible for us to determine whether hormone therapy and sex reassignment surgery are objectively medically necessary for all time or just useful as a crutch for people who are justifiably maladjusted to an imperialistic world. Sex had long been defined socially and not biologically for the human species. Under communism, when gender oppression is eradicated and gender ceases to exist, will people still want to change their biology? What? These are questions we cannot answer until we get there. For now, we encourage everyone who has a poor self-image and an unsatisfactory sex life to recognize these as products of capitalism and join the struggle toward world liberation. There is a thorough analysis of how the gender struggle impacts our struggle for communism, and it is contained in the 208 on page 200 in the 208 page magazine titled MIM Theory, Gender and Revolutionary Feminism. While not new, it has a more updated assessment than Sartre, specifically in regards to the gender aristocracy. I'm not sure. Aristocracy, something to that accord. All right, Boudica claims to have read and to uphold MT 2/3, but misses a main point that the struggle of first world women generally lead to more national oppression here and throughout the world. Examples include the lynching of black men as a trade for more gender privilege for white women, the forced drug testing on third world women directly leading to an increase in the availability of birth control for first world women, and the failed pseudo-feminist movement which had no positive impact on the gender struggle for the majority of women. It is true that we recommend the MIM theory as the best starting point for why nation trumps gender as the principal contradiction, on how black men are more gender oppressed than white women. The gender issue covering gay marriage, porn, sexual abuse, and how prison destroy families. Although nation is the principal contradiction in the world today, it still may be possible to organize women and LGBTQ prisoners under the Maiwis International Ministry umbrella against their own material interests as Americans. Subjectively inspired to organize women and LGBTQ prisoners, we was encouraged to organize these populations around MIM as a revolutionary feminist organization, aims to end gender oppression as part of our struggle for communism, but there are many roles to play at this stage that we do not fulfill. All right, so I really have no personal take on that. Well, what I could say is this, that all right, so as you can see, that's based on the oppression of people within the LGBT community. So therefore, the Noble Laws Party is not religious based. So for those who are Muslims, for those who are Christians, or any religion that prohibits this particular act, we appreciate that you keep your personal views to yourselves. Each one teach one, and that's how it goes. We just based on the common thread of oppression, finding the oppressor, and the Revolutionary Act. So for those who are religious, each one teach one. Like, this platform would not let no side to impose nothing on no group. Therefore, religion cannot, no one who's religious cannot impose religions on no group, and LGBT cannot impose their views on no group. But we will keep our equal playing field in regards to fighting the oppressors. All right? With that said, peace, salute. This is Malik Alim, the chairman of the New York State chapter for Noble Young Lords Party. One Lord, one people, stay noble. Peace.